Right. Okay, so welcome everybody to yet another Max Meetup, a Music Hack Space Max Meetup. As you can see, I'm here with two wonderful presenters. I want to theme this meetup around performing live at Max because I think that's one of the two main pillars of most people who work with Max. People either make a lot of installations or fixed media works, or they really make stuff for live performance, especially in the contemporary and experimental music sides. And I just had this feeling over the last few months as I was talking with people that people are a bit jittery when it comes to performing live. That they have their doubts about things working or how to make things work or how to build upon existing things to make something cool and new. And that's why I have Helen and Marta here who are going to present new things about performing, so new ways of performing live, and also new ways of how to perform live or how to think about performing live, I believe. So, Marta, if it's okay with you, I'm going to kick you off the stage because we're going to start with Helen. And I'm going to. There we go. Leave Helen. And Helen, I'm just going to introduce you quickly. Here on my WhatsApp, I just sent myself a bunch of text to read out loud to introduce you, and then I will just give you the floor. So, Helen Bledsoe is active as a soloist, ensemble player, teacher, improviser, author, and creator of experimental electronic works. As a soloist and ensemble member of Cologne's renowned ensemble Muziekfabriek, she has collaborated and premiered works by numerous composers. Currently, she is a guest professor at the Josip Vitols Latvian Academy of Music in Riga. Hope I said that right. Guest faculty for the Lucerne Festival Academy, external artist consultant in AI-based creative and performance practices for the research team Creatie at the Royal Conservatory of Antwerp, which I heard is a fantastic conservatory and research group, but you didn't hear that from me. And she's a coach for the European Workshop for Contemporary Music and Studio Muziekfabriek. And Helen's presentation is entitled Controlling Synthesizers Through Live Performance. So, Helen, the stage is yours.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, it's my theme has evolved a little bit. I'm not only controlling a synthesizer now, which you will see, it's controlling some other things. My my whole thing came about, my history of why I got involved with live performance in Max is because I have done in the past most of my stuff through Max for Live, which makes performance very easy. You know, you have a timeline, you can draw an automation, you stop, you can set it for a certain amount of time, things get triggered when they're supposed to get triggered. And my challenge this year has been to how to deal with the linearity or non-linearity sometimes of time in live performance. And yeah, I've come up with a couple of ways to do that, which I will show you. If you have 3.5 minutes of patience, I can play for you a clip of me performing flute and controlling a synthesizer, which is a Moog simulation, and several different corpora of sounds, and the latent space of a neural network that was trained on Rave. So if you're all for that, I will just share my screen right now with you, and you can listen to that, and then I'll show you the patch, how it was done. So here we go. Go back to the beginning. Give a shout if you can't hear this. Oh, wait a minute, this is the wrong thing. I'm sorry. Sorry. Yep. One moment, please. Sorry. Here we go. All right, we'll share this. It's just with this new one, you can see the patch as well. I wanted to show that you could see myself and the patch as well. So here we go. No, that's not show. Sorry about that. It's the wrong thing. Bear with me. Here we go. Okay, so that's that. Now, what you saw, of course, was the presentation mode. So, let's have a look at the patch. So here's the patch outside of presentation mode. I hope you can all see this. So the presentation mode, and here's presentation mode. So my strategy for this was was based on presets, finding presets and then interpolating the presets through an object called nodes. If you're familiar with this, the cool thing about nodes is, well, like instead of drawing a straight line through the presets, you can draw as much as you, yeah, you can draw whatever you like. Let me zoom in here. I've set up a feature here that can record your mouse movements up here. So I could take this and record whatever movements I want. And it stops automatically, and then when I play them, they'll just play. Okay, well, it's not set up now, but it's, yeah, you get the idea. But that is the idea. You draw through the presets, and you can move the presets around as well, and by Alt and scrolling, you can also change the size of them. So this is sort of the complicated way that you could do this. And another, I'll show you my previous way of doing this, which was a lot simpler. If this is something that can something that's just a lot more in and out, so to say. Where I had a clocker going. Here's the inside of the sub patch here, which has a clocker. And then you set your in and out times. Like say you have a piece that's going to last 5 minutes, and you would set the time, in here and just make certain in and out times. And okay, I'll share the sub patch separately. You make the in and out times, and then what happens in the sub patch, which I will show you now, switch to. I don't see it lifted. It's really silly. Bear with me 1 moment. I'll get that back up. I don't know if the screen is not showing up. Oh, there it is. Got it. Thanks for your patience. So if you can see this, you've got, once the seconds start coming in, you have a select, and then what happens is you send whatever pair of in and out to whatever features, whatever presets you want, whatever effects that you want, whatever samples that you want triggered to be. So this was like, it was a kind of linear clocked way of doing this. I can show this later if anybody wants to have a look at that. But now back to the main patch. I'll tell a little bit more about the sounds that are coming out. I'm going to set up here so that it can take incoming audio. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'm hoping you can. Good. And that I can also test it on a playlist of things to set that up. Oops, sorry. So what happens is I'm relying heavily on Rodrigo Costanzo's SP tools. And at the moment, I've got his descriptors coming out here. And they send you loudness and the derivative of the loudness, centroid derivative of that, the flatness, the derivative of that.
Hey, Helen, so sorry for interrupting
yes,
you. We are not seeing your
yes,
screen right
yes.
now. So maybe you can just share
Oh,
the
what
patch.
happened?
You know, if you're not sharing audio,
Sorry,
you can just share the entire screen. That's also okay.
Yeah, yes. Okay, sorry about that. Thanks for the heads up.
No problem.
Here we go. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Can you see it now?
It's all good.
Great, okay. Okay, so we've got the descriptors here. And I've set up, his descriptors come in 2 flavors. There's the ones with, they send out descriptions on every onset, or you can have real-time descriptors, which I've set up for future use because what I have is a work in progress. Now I'm filtering these. As you can see, I've got the centroid coming out, which is it's modifying the so a delay thing that I've got going on here. I can show that patch, show that sub patch later. And the pitch is sent in true Moog keyboard fashion, as you, if you can trigger it on and off to the ladder filter. So we've got that connected. The other thing that I have that relies heavily on Rodrigo are his corpus. So what happens is I've got a corpus 1 and corpus 2. Corpus 1 is a corpus full of Moog sounds. So the idea was to have playing my flute being reflected with pitch by a real Moog simulator, but punctuated sometimes when there are loud, bright sounds by a snatches of a corpus, which are being matched to my loudness and spectral, all these descriptors that are coming out of the filter here. And another corpus are corpuses, sounds from the tromba marina. Those are the quiet sounds that you heard at the end, and they are triggered by the more quiet sounds. And they're also 2 minutes long, and they're also sifted. You can have probability, how often they are sounded. And the last thing that was that you heard, probably I had the probability up too high, possibly it was probably annoying. This is the latent space of a neural network model that I trained on a certain just sounds that I had gathered. And each preset has a different, as you can see, if I change the presets up here, that the XY moves here and here. Oops, and the triggers as well. So it goes through a different space at a different preset. And that, of course, is also triggered at certain times, according to the preset and the probability. So I'm not sure how much detail to go in here. So I'm wondering if there are any questions. Yeah, that's right. It's heavily based on the fluid. Thanks for showing that and sharing that. Also, if anybody's got it, yeah, you got the SP tools. I have a list. I wrote a list and a document of all the links to all of this stuff that I was going to share later. So yes, I'd like
Yeah,
to know how to proceed if there are any
I
questions.
actually have a question,
Yes.
Helen. And if people have questions, there, you should of course write it on the chat as I ask my question. But I'm curious. Let me turn on my camera as well. I'm just curious about the creative process because you have created something very impressive, and I see there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of presets that you really segmented in your own patch. So, what was the starting point for something like this? What were you trying to accomplish when you were starting with a patch like this?
Well, this comes from an old idea where I really was trying to build a monster synthesizer that had at least 3 heads, like the monster Ghidorah. And then I realized that that got kind of boring because if you have a synthesizer only following your pitches, it can get old. So what I wanted to do was to keep that synthesizer, but then that's the sort of thing that's mine. That's the thing that incorporates myself. And then you want to have something that punctuates that. Um, and that's where the different corpuses come in, um, which are granular and give it sort of texture but aren't continuous. And with the neural network, I chose a rather percussive one so that would offer even further punctuation or articulation into it and to contrast the sort of smooth sounds as much as possible. So I try to operate on the principle of 3 things, like something that's mine, something that's sort of mine but weird and granulated, and then something that's really punctuated and contrasting. That was the creative process behind choosing the sounds. Does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. And
Um,
is it your intention
okay.
to use this for a more complete piece or work or a performance?
Yes, because the setup with this um, is entirely flexible. You can choose your own presets and draw your own path through these presets, and add as many presets as you want. They can take up to, I don't know, 32 or 64 nodes. This is an amazing um, object, which is normally, if you know Leafcutter John, he's got a wonderful Max for Life. No, no, I think it's just a Max. It's a Max patch. It's not Max for Life, called Forest,
Yeah.
that primarily is used as a granulator and an effect box, and it's used for triggering samples. So yeah, that's a really cool thing. If somebody's got the link to that, that would be great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Forester GUI is basically this. It's I did really nothing fancy with this. Maybe someday you can add your own stuff to it and make it very creative, but I didn't go with that for now. And the other thing that makes this flexible is choosing your own corpus. I have the first corpus here of the Moog sounds and the other one of the trombone marina, so I could just swap those out and have a completely different world of sounds. And I could swap this out with a different neural network model that was trained and also have a completely different world. And the synthesizer I could also swap out with some gen thing or something simpler or more complicated.
In the chat, I'm seeing a
So
question
yeah, and
about NN and neural
yes,
networks. Maybe you can go a bit more into detail in that, Helen. The NN tilde and how it works exactly, or what it exactly does.
yes, the in and tilde, you need to build up a corpus of sounds that you would like to, for which you would like to train a model. I have one that I didn't use here, for example, is on lupophone sound. So I had a colleague of mine play up to an hour, which is really not enough. You need up to at least anywhere from 3 to 25 hours to train a really good model. But we had about an hour, and you run it through the Rave. They have a collab notebook. I can, if the links haven't already been shared in the chat, I can share those links later. You go through a process of uploading these and running through scripts. They're based on Python and PyTorch. And at the end, for Max, for this particular NN object, which is in Max and pure data, you need to export a tensor file. And you load that tensor file up, and you can play with its latent spaces. That's it in a nutshell. It's a long process. It can take up to days or weeks to train a model. And there are other exciting things that are coming out. I saw Newtone at the preliminary to the hackathon they had at Queen Mary University in London yesterday. That's really fascinating stuff going on. So I'm going to look at some of the questions that are coming in, if you don't mind. Work on hugging face. That's great. I want to train more Rave models, but I've never been able to do ones that I'm really satisfied with. So I'm really excited about the new, the second version that's come out. Did Hungry Joe, did that answer your question about what the neural network is doing? Because when you train a neural network, export a tensor file, load it up into an object in Max, you have what they call latent spaces, which is just really a fancy word for a big matrix of different sounds, which have been resynthesized, and you're through this XY object that I have, you can go through them and just listen to them. It also, there's another version that where you can, if you just do the forward mode, it can follow pitch. If you have a well-trained network, it will follow your pitch and recreate the mapped sound. This is the way, really transferring the timbre from one to another. The issue with the Rave models is that there's always latency.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have heard that as well in my demonstration, but this kind of latency is something I like to play with. And if you use that in combination with Rodrigo's SP tools, which are almost zero latency, I think you can have a really interesting percussive interplay of stuff. Um, I'll go on to the next. Can I speak about how my flute playing interacts with the patch in addition to being a sound instrument performing? Yeah, the flute becomes a kind of controller through these sensory percussion descriptors. Um, if I can share my screen for just a second, I'll point to the descriptors, which they are.
I think you're already sharing your screen, but it's all
Oh my,
glitched out in a
okay,
really
great.
cool way. It's like different parts of the screen are
Okay,
different parts of the patch. It's really cool.
yeah,
But
okay,
maybe for good measure, if you
sorry,
stop sharing your screen and share it again, that might fix it.
right,
I don't know if the others are seeing what I'm seeing, but
yep, okay, here goes.
it's still glitched out for some.
So
Ah, there we go. Perfect.
it's glitched out.
No, so
Okay,
it's all good now.
all right, so here there's this descriptors, and yeah, this is what I was trying to say when I was accidentally not sharing my screen. What happens is that my live sound is coming in through this cable here, and it sends out either a list of what's coming out. It analyzes the loudness, the centroid, that is how brightness, the flatness of the spectrum, and my pitch, and other things, useful things too, like the pitch confidence. And you can do this as either a sort of real-time list or in a buffer. And going to the buffer um, is the list that I have that's triggering these filters, which are then triggering the corpus match, the different samples that are in these corpus match. And as I mentioned, other things too. Like for example, how high I play also affects the cutoff of the ladder filter from the Moog. And all of that information just is coming through these descriptors. I hope that answers your question. I'll go on. If there's another follow-up question to that, I'll get to it. Yeah, okay, yeah, Balint about the NN and latency. My go-to setup is to, I can't remember. So I've trained several models. I think sometimes that have the cached convolutions, and they will reduce latency and but maybe reduce the quality. And I've done others the other way around without the cached convolutions and that are supposed to have better latency. But I mean, I had a brief conversation with Antoine about this, and he said at the moment, the latency is always going to be around 40 milliseconds. And at the moment with this technology, there's not much getting around that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that in a nutshell. Yeah, no. No, the NN tilde is not part of the SP tools. There's a separate link for that. I can maybe somebody can Google that. That's found, I believe, on the Rave. If you go to Earcom Acids, have a quick look.
I believe they have a GitHub page. Yeah, Balint just
Yeah,
linked it.
great. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for doing all that stuff.
On their YouTube channel, Rave also has a really cool short video that demonstrates what NN does and how it kind of works in intuitive ways.
Yes.
It's really cool.
Most of my use for it up to this point has been for sound design, not in real time, but to do it as sort of a fake live effect where you do the thing live, and then when you put the sound design together, you compensate for the latency just by moving the samples back and forth. He's asking on which YouTube channel on which YouTube channel is the NN tilde?
I think they're asking about that demonstration video I was talking about, so the YouTube channel of Rave. Or I guess the YouTube channel of Assets, the research group that made Rave.
Yeah.
since I'm
Well, I can
recording
quick
this
look.
meetup, I can't really go on Chrome and
Okay.
reveal all the embarrassing tabs I have open, so I'll have to ask one of you to write it on the chat.
Hang on. I'm going to see. I'm taking a quick look. Here we go. I don't know if this is the. Whoop, ah, that's loud.
Well, luckily, we aren't hearing it.
Okay. Oh yeah, you beat me to it.
Ah,
Okay,
there,
there it
bounce
is.
on it.
Great.
Leave a heart there.
Oh, nice.
All
Okay.
right. So, Helen, maybe at this stage, what we can do is
Well,
now we can move on to the presentation of Marta. But as I've said at the beginning, after Marta's
yes.
presentation, we are going to split up into two meetup rooms. So, if you want to talk more
Okay.
about this with Helen, I'm talking to the people in the audience, of course. Talk more about Anna, go deeper in the patch, just ask her questions in general. You can do that after the presentation of Marta, and of course the same is true to chat with Marta after her presentation as well. But thank you so much, Helen. It's really cool. You
You're
mentioned
welcome.
this list of resources that you bundled up. You can put that in the chat if you want, and then it should be available for
Okay.
everyone.
Okay. I'll just drop that in. Some
All
of them have
right.
been already. Okay. Here we go.
Ah, fantastic. Okay, so I'm now going to kick you off the stage. Apologies for that, but I have to invite
No
Marta.
problem.
Thank you again.
See you later. You're welcome.
Okay, now I'm alone and I don't want to be alone, so I'm going to now invite Marta on the stage.
Is my camera on?
Yes, there you are. Hey, Marta.
I'm still here.
Yes, you're still here.
Good presentation.
That's great because I prepared all this text to read about you before your presentation, so I can do that while you are here. All right, so now the second presentation of the two presentation Max Meetup is by Marta Verde, who is a certified Max trainer, a digital artist, creative technologist, maker, and educator. She's currently a full-time associate professor at Berklee College of Music, the Valencia campus, where she teaches Max MSP and other topics related to technology and creativity. Her presentation is entitled Max MSP, where I hope this works meets live performance, which is a very cool title, so I'm very curious to hear what it's about. Stage is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. Let me share my screen, and I'm going to just share the entire screen, and there it is. I'm not sure if I can choose here. Well, let's go live. Can you all see my screen? Yes.
Yes, all good.
So I'm going to remove this and then just stay with myself. Just this thing over here. That will be fine. Well, thank you, Umut, for having me. I was really hesitant, like, I don't know what I should talk about, because for live performance, I mean, every person has his own, I don't know, tips and tools and, you know, like the kind of stuff they do their own things. But I tried to summarize all what I could during the past few days. So I want to just give you like a little bit of highlights in different things that for me, they worked, but as you know, in Max, there is not a single way of doing things. There are different solutions to arrive to the same place. And it's usually what I try to teach to my students. So I want to just go through them. I have some patches I worked in the past, so I can share them with you. So I think it will be fine. I'm not seeing the chat because I'm just sharing the entire screen, but wait a second. I'm going to open the chat just in my phone. Just in case there is any question, I can just see the chat. So give me just 1 second. Where is the random max space? Meetup. A ver, what is it? Where I am is here. Okay. Okay, sorry for the delay.
I think you now joined from your phone. So your screen share dropped out, your webcam dropped out. And I
Wait a
think we are hearing
second,
you from your
because
phone.
I'm not hearing you. Just in the phone. That's weird. Let me just hide. No.
I have a feeling it can be one or the other, and I don't think you can
Yes.
random and parallel.
Okay, I just learned that.
But you know, I'm
I'm so
here.
sorry, just
I'm
for the
looking at the
trial.
chat. So if there is something popping up, I can just let you know. So no worries.
No worries, I can just make it super small and then just leave it
Ah.
somewhere. That's it. Well, as I was saying, because I don't know if my audio was cutting, I'm going to share with you some tips that for me worked in the past and I'm still using them. But as you know, there is not a single solution in Max, so let's see. I mainly work for audiovisual performances, so I mostly do visuals. I can do some audio, but I'm not brave enough to just share my audio with other people. So I'm just going to keep it with the visual side. And some tips that most of the tips I give to my students as well. So first of all, I mean, I don't know if you can see this screen, and my mouse is around here. First, the first thing to do is just try to remove all unnecessary banks, number boxes. This is like super typical of having 10p windows in the same patch when you're working with visuals. Just remove all of that because unless you need them, they shouldn't be there because they are eating a lot of CPU energy. And other data monitoring objects, like for example, prints, message boxes for just displaying data, numbered with tilde especially consumes a lot of resources, git.cell block, scopes, all of that stuff needs to be out unless you need it for the performance.
Marta, Ballant is asking
Yes.
if you can zoom in a little bit into your patch, I
I
presume.
can zoom. Yes, look, let me just make it bigger. Sometimes my mouse disappears and I don't know why. Here it is.
Ah, beautiful.
Wow. Now you can see it. That's the point number one. Removing all unnecessary things that are in your patch, because I know that when we're patching, we tend to just apply so many different things. We can monitor everything and check all the data, but then for a live performance, you should not be taking that into consideration because that will be confusing. Then the second one that helps me a lot is obviously using presentation mode. You don't want to try to go for a live performance with not setting a presentation mode. At least for me, it's a disaster. I tried once to go to an algo rave. I don't know if you ever went to an algo rave with live coders. I tried to do live coding with Max in real time, setting my background of the patch in transparent, and then doing weird things, but it was a point where I could not see anything. So it was a really bad idea. It was fun, but it was a bad idea. And especially define the initial window location, because usually if you are doing visuals, we will be using the screen, the projector, whatever is the output video going, usually it's a separate screen. So it happened me in the past to just open my patch and then some part of my patch appears in the projector, or just the audience is just seeing that. And you don't really want to do that. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm going to just show it. For example, this one. This is one patch I created for Cycling74. They asked me for a patch for starting with just black and white high contrast visuals. And for example, this patch by default opens here in this corner and at this size and in presentation mode, which is really important for me because I don't want this thing to just be appearing like this, So you're just seeing the entire thing just over there. If you don't know how to do that, if you go to view, well, first you need to set up the screen in the way you want and in the position you want. Go to view, define fixed initial window location, and then save, because usually we forgot to save and we really need to save the patch to keep things just in there. And if you don't remember, because I'm not sure about the level of the audience, but if you go to the inspector window of the patch itself, you should be able to check this checkerboard for just open the patch in presentation. So you will be safe in that way. And this is a tip that saved me like tons of times. This is just for managing and everything. Because in the presentation mode, I try to just let the stuff I'm going to manipulate and just to modify. Then I can use MIDI controllers and use the mouse, but I'm just keeping what I want to touch in the presentation mode to not just destroy everything. And this is also important if you're going to share, for example, you have a commission at work and someone is asking you for a patch, just send it like this so it will be easier for them to not break your patch trying to modify things that they should not be touching. And another lifesaver, for me at least, because I'm a visual person, is just using some kind of color coding or using panels. So you can also see in this patch that I opened here, super bright colors, I'm that kind of person. But even in presentation mode or in the original patch, if I'm getting out of there, I'm using the same panels. I'm trying to leave myself notes for myself of the future, because this happens a lot when you open a patch that you did 3 years ago And it sounded like what I was doing here. I don't know what I was thinking about. So usually giving comments for yourself for the future, it will be super extra helpful, and especially to isolate different processes in your patch with, I don't know, for me it works with panels. You could use anything else, different colors, I don't know. But this helps me a lot to kind of, if I need to troubleshoot something on the super fast on the fly during a performance or just in the sound check, in this way I can really identify what I'm looking for. If I'm using a super deorganized patch, I won't be able to just fix it, and otherwise I will just destroy it for sure. So this is kind of this thingy. I'm not seeing the chat, but I'm just continuing. Well, another major thing. Update all matrix-based objects into some OpenGL version. I mean, if you're going to just, I don't know, play a single video and apply just a few effects, you're fine, you're safe. But if your patch is going to grow a lot, or you're using a lot of effects, just chaining a lot of effects, if you're using just matrices as a basis, that will be just, you will be losing a lot of frames on the way. So I have here this other patch that I can share with you later. And this article that you can see here at the left side helped me a lot, because sometimes I don't remember the exact objects. So here, let me just scroll down. This is an article that is in the Cycling 74 website since some years ago, but when I found it, it was a lifesaver, because we can find all the equivalents from regular jitter objects, as we could say, to GL-based objects. And this saved my life so many times to kind of try to update, for example, old patches that I did in the past to be like more accurate and more efficient. If you bring everything into GL world, that will save your life, as I said before. And this article is inside of this tutorial for best practices in jitter. This is the part 1. For sure, all of you know this article. But mainly, I try to rely all with textures. So for example, if you're using JitMovie for doing video playback, just enable the output texture flag. You will be safe. If you prefer to use, for example, let's bring the chickens video, that's classic. Because by default, the playlist object also comes with green patch cords, so that means it's a matrix. So this one also has the possibility to enable output texture. So you can really rely everything on a JIT-world object, where you can define the window, set everything to be right. So I really recommend you to just take a look to those 2 articles, because they're really lifesavers. So if you want to improve the patches you already have, because you're feeling that there's some kind of lack of efficiency, that's kind of the best way of going. And also, because I have it here, I'm just jumping between topics, but I just have it right here. Git.fps guide, whatever you want to say it, is the best way to just monitor your patches. So if you are between 30 and 60 frames per second, you're kind of right. If you feel that it's dropping frames, just you need to start debugging to see what's going on. For example, I have another patch I'm going to show you later that is running at a faster speed, but usually, even if your patch is running at 100 frames per second, you won't notice a visual difference. I mean, a human eye cannot really distinguish if it's running at 60 frames per second or 100. But if you're working between those frames, you're right. If it's going 10, 15, you're clearly losing some frames either. So we should rely all the visual elements just in the GPU of the computer. That is where the OpenGL patches are really executed in the inside. What else? Look, this trick, when using OpenGL, transform changed attributes to arguments when patching will save your life, because usually we start tweaking so many different attributes, number boxes, attributes, anything, and then later you forgot to save them and you lose all the work and all the modifications you did in the past. So for example, let me bring the older patch that I have here, the one I created for cycling. Maybe I can just tweak a little bit more things. So for example, this is a super cheesy example, okay, just simple. But for example, I have this GGL mesh. You know that when we are working with GL, there are tons of attributes that we can modify. I mean, this is endless. But if suddenly I'm tweaking things, I don't know what is this doing, but let's see later the result. I decide to change so many different things. Okay, poly mode cannot go that high, sorry. Just going just crazy. So just for setting up the patch to start in that specific way, instead of adding tons of load banks or trying to save into presets, I found this trick of going to the left side of the object, clicking this little triangle, transform changed attributes to arguments. This copies all you changed into the object box. So this will keep all the changes you made. So then later your patch will auto start with those settings as a default. And this really helped me a lot in the past. When I discovered this, I was super extra happy. I'm not going to save it because if not, I'm going to destroy the patch. Let me just check because I see that there are a lot of comments here in the chat and maybe I just go.
Yeah, some people said they couldn't hear you, but I could hear you well, and Balin said it's good as well. So maybe it's a problem on their end. So I suggest just
it was not my fault.
Discord. No,
Okay,
you're doing very good.
Cool. Well, I was talking about GL and generation because with OpenGL we can just generate 3D graphics, textures, different stuff in the patch. But if you're using video files as a basis because you want to go with more found footage you created, some recordings you made with your camera, I don't know, we need to enter into discussion of using codecs. So mainly I would recommend after a few years of doing live visuals with Max. Where's my mouse? Okay, here's back. I would recommend, because there are three main options, okay? There are so many different codecs in the market that you can use. But I will go for Hub, especially if you have a performance, a scenario where you need a really high resolution and a smooth playback. And that's critical. And if you're using a good computer, your computer will be really able to just handle that kind of codec. It's kind of recent, not that recent, but for some people will be recent. But you can find here the website. If you look for Hub codec, it will give you some insights about where to use it. And especially for converting my own videos into Hub, I use the ABF batch exporter, where you can also select, like, I have 20 videos, I want to just export them at once to the same codec. This one accepts just batch exporting. So this is great, so you don't need to go one by one exporting them. In the past, we tend to use PhotoGPG. That is also a great codec, but this one is more intensive on the CPU. So you really need to do some trials because it depends. If you are just playing a video that is 1 hour long, perhaps you don't need to use Hub just with PhotoGPG, you're right. You need some trials. And then the other super famous codec is H.264. That is also great, but the file size could be bigger than Hub. So you really need to pay some attention into that. So for example, I just converted a video I have somewhere here. For example, let me just make it bigger. Oh my God, it's going. Look, I was working on some videos that they were recorded in ProRes, but this is just a 5 seconds video, and in ProRes it weighs 234 megabytes, which is kind of big. And then in Hub it only weighs 88 megabytes. So in this way, you can just compress the videos more, and something also super important, Hub codec accepts alpha channel. So if you're working with transparency and different layers and you want to keep the background transparent, Hub accepts transparency as well. So this is something that, for example, for some installations I did in the past, I was working with different layers of video. So Hub really saved my life because I could just layer different videos with no need of working with blending modes or any kind of esoteric functionality Max for being able to just layer those videos later or in any other software. So just going with Hub is okay. And then another life savior, this works for me because for the same live performance, I tend to use too many softwares at the same time. I can use Max, I can use processing, I can use VDMX, that is my main VGen software, or maybe other, I don't know, maybe in the past I was using Open Frameworks a lot. I know that it's not used anymore, but it was cool. I tend to just route everything into Siphon for two main reasons. Let me just open this patching here because I have it working. Here it is. Well, Siphon is mainly a library for sharing frames in real time between different softwares, which is great. Siphon is only supported in macOS, but the correspondent for Windows is called Spout, and there is also Max external for that, so you're safe. It works in a very similar way, so it's just super easy to apply to any patch. And I mainly rely on Siphon for two main reasons. One, for keeping one main software that handles everything. So just in case something goes wrong or just something crashes, I have some kind of backup to play a video. And usually, as I said before, in my live performances, I try to use so many different softwares. So I prefer to use one way that is kind of the main output for all the content I'm generating and using in real time. So using Siphon gives me the flexibility of using another softwares, using videos, applying different effects, and then creating another software, and also for recording my own stuff. Because mainly, I don't know, if I want to record a small snippet for just doing an Instagram post or something like that, I will prefer to just record it in Siphon. I already have set the structure in my computer, so all my Siphon recordings, they go to the same place. I can record audio as well, especially if I'm recording audio from the computer when I'm just trying some different stuff. And one of the only things that I would say about Siphon, because this is a typical issue, is that, let me just find my Siphon recorder that is here receiving the same thing. So I don't really need to be seeing my graphics twice. This is eating a lot of CPU. So I just need to kill the window by setting the attribute visible to 0. So the graphics are going somewhere, I don't know, just for recording in Siphon Recorder, just in BDMX for something else, I don't know. But I don't need to be rendering the same thing twice. So that's really, really important, because sometimes we forgot to do that, and if we are doing something in 4K or in a super big resolution, my computer will suffer a lot. And usually I use this same, let me see if I can paint it here. Yes, I can paint, look, that's fantastic. I'm just adding this at the very end of all my JIT worlds when I'm doing visuals. I'm drawing everything to Siphon. I'm enabling output texture set to 1, and visible is just set to 0 by default for me, because I don't want to be seeing the screen by default. And then I'm just using the GL Siphon server with the exact same name I set in the draw to function, and we are safe to go. We can also use it with matrices, but with GL textures it works really, really good. The only bad thing is that I cannot really rotate anything here in this screen, but I'm not using that in real time, so we are safe. So Siphon is great, and you can find Siphon in most of the, look, all those icons. In most of the softwares that they can handle video in real time, they have Siphon support. Even from Unity, Max, BDMX, I don't know, Open Frameworks, Touch Designer, so you can really share streams of data. And there is also a Siphon client, so I can receive also graphics in Max from other places. So I really recommend you to use Siphon. Something else, because this happens a lot with my students, if you're using BC modules that I think they're great for starting, I would recommend you to switch them to the BC version, that is an abstraction that uses no interface, for two main reasons. Because it saves a lot of physical space in the patch, because BC objects could tend to be really big. As you can tell, I don't know, like two-toner or other thingies. I mean, they are big. It's like with BIP, no? That they are like gigantic. But if you don't really need to be seeing the interface, you can always type visita dot whatever. This is the tool router. I was not looking for that one. Suddenly it's night and I'm just hearing the darkness. But the visita version has the exact same inlets. It works in the exact same way. But for me, I found that it's much more efficient in order to work in real time. Because, for example, maybe you don't want to touch anything. Or you can just send data to the inlets and you're good to go just with any kind of controller. So if you want to use some BC, I recommend you to just switch to this small short version. Okay, I cannot close my patch. Okay, that's safe. Well, I don't know if you want to rely into presets because I use presets a lot. But sometimes presets could give us into some trouble because they're saving everything in the patch by default. So remember that we can exclude some objects to be recorded inside of the preset by using, I can just add it here, preset, roll friend. Its third outlet, any object connected to that outlet, that I know that is kind of counterintuitive because you're connecting an output to an input and it's kind of weird, but those objects will be excluded from a preset. So for example, if there is some settings you want to change during a live set, but there are other stuff you want to leave open just for improvising in the top, you should be using preset in this mode to avoid things to be saved. And especially with audio outputs, because maybe you're going to switch off the audio output anytime you press the preset, because maybe it was off during that moment and you didn't figure out, and then you just destroyed the preset. So this third outlet is really great. When I found it, another lifesaver. Well, as I told before, I tend to use git.fps key. It's the best usage just for Macs for checking how the frame rate of your patch is doing. So anything that goes under 30, you should be doing some troubleshooting. And especially, we should do some stress testing to run the patch and try it at home. I mean, you need to do some rehearsals as well to try to put it to them more into their limits to kind of check that all is going fine. So I never go to a live performance with not trying the patch a lot beforehand, because if not, it will be just a disaster. And then coming into MIDI, I try to use my MIDI controller a lot. Sometimes then later I forgot. Building some sort of small interfaces, and also OSC is really handy for communicating different patches between themselves, for using Max as a controller for other softwares. As I said before, I use a lot of processing, for example, and in processing for creating just an interface could be kind of tiring because you need to code everything by yourself and then add an extra window, and it's kind of time consuming. So I tend to use OSC to just send things from one place to another. I don't know, maybe later I can show how I do it because I have my recipe already done. And especially relying, because OSC, if you don't know, is a communication protocol that is based on a network. Usually I don't trust on anyone else's Wi-Fi because it could just go down. It could have even some ports that could be cut and maybe OSC is not working at all. So just create your own local network. If you're under macOS, it's like super easy to create your own local network from the computer. Or if not, I will just bring an old router and just connecting my cable and creating a fake internet connection that has no internet for real, but it works for communication. That's really great. Especially, for example, I can remember a moment when I had to use a router because I was in another algo rave with other musicians, so I wanted to just destroy and receive the window from Sonic Pi from the musicians to kind of destroy it in real time in my jitter patch. So I was receiving everything through NDI, that is really similar to Siphon, but works over a network. And by using a local router, that thing works perfect. So I was carrying that all the time with my backpack, just for connecting all the computers all inside. I know that here we are supposed to be today talking about performances, but sometimes I also do installations. So for example, I found some years ago that Automator is a great tool. I mean, it's just for macOS system. I'm so sorry about for the Windows users. For sure, there is a similar tool in Windows. I'm not sure. But I found that Automator was great. And I can remember, I mean, don't look at this patch. It has 10 years old. There's some objects that they even doesn't exist anymore, like Spygot. But I can remember that for this installation, it was just running around Spain in different cities. We had some kind of experiment with audio. Some videos were going to be recorded, uploaded to a server, and then some kind of QR codes going out from a printer. So it was a simple but complex patch because it was using also like Arduino sensors and different things to just trigger installation. So I found out that the best way to kind of automatize different processes in my patch, it was just to create different .app applications. I have one here still open. And it's not open. Okay, let me just find this one. I'm so sorry, my interface is in Spanish. But for example, we were recording all the videos of the users. They were going to be filtered. They were going to be just converted into a different format, and they were going to be just uploaded to a server where the videos were going to be just saved and then generated a QR code based on that. So it was kind of complex. So I created different applications that they were just called from the Max patch at the right moment. So for encoding the video, for uploading the video, and then for generating the QR code for then just printing it back, I was using Automator, and it was a real lifesaver. I mean, this patch is a disaster. Look at it. But I was still using the color coding thing, so it's not that bad. It worked fine. And what else? Well, I'm going to just jump to the final one because I think I'm taking too extensive. Because I can tell like an old lady story, because especially for performances where you have any kind of external data or device you're relying to, for example, with dancers, where you're doing some cameras for just doing some motion tracking or something like that. Let me open my Plan B patch. This is an image from a performance I did a long time ago, where the graphics, especially that graphic, was made in processing, but I was keeping all the control from Max because we were using the old school Kinect, the version 1, in that moment when it came out to the market, and it was great because we went all to buy that thing when it came out. And I can remember that that camera, at the beginning of the ages, we had to use a pose to be tracked. I mean, it was not automatic. People had to do, I don't know if you can see me, but I'm just totally sick in the dark. Had to do some kind of cactus pose to be cacti pose to be tracked. So it was working smoothly for all the gigs we made, but there was one moment where the camera didn't want to track the dancer. And I was just sitting in the console where the technicians were, so I was really far away from the scenario, from the stage. And you cannot have a theater and an audience in total darkness with nothing happening in a theater for more than a minute. Maybe a minute is even too long for the audience. So I had to come up with this solution by using this visual slider that you all know, to kind of be chasing the dancer in real time, to kind of try to fake it and try to solve the gig. Because if not, it was a total disaster. Because the dancer was expecting a signal from me. I mean, you cannot see really well here in the picture. Let me just zoom in. But well, the dancer had their eyes covered at the beginning of the performance, so she could not ever see anything. So she was waiting for a red LED that installed in the stage. So I had to click here to give her the clue that she could start dancing and performing. So she was tracked, so you're good to go. So between this red LED, it saved my life. And then this stupid trick of being just chasing her. In this moment, the Kinect was being used with Synapse. That was a really, really old app for doing just motion tracking, and it was sending all over OSC, over a network. And in this specific moment, we were just tracking the hands. So that's why I have only left hand and right hand here. So I could do the trick to kind of save the performance. So usually if you're relying on any kind of external device, like cameras, lip motions, even sensors, always have some kind of fake moment to try to use as a plan B, just in case anything fails, because computers fail. Or they could restart, or maybe someone just unplugs a cable, and you really need to keep the show going. Wow, I spoke super fast. Okay, let me just share one last thing, and we're ready to go. Or not. Let me just see. Because... Okay. I did an exercise of organizing one of my own patches that I committed the total error of going to a performance using a patch that looked like this. And it was a disaster. And especially because it was running at a super low frame rate. So you can see this thing here. I can't really troubleshoot anything. Even if I had a small presentation mode, but it was not really trustful because I had all just going around and super deorganized. So the good one, then I set it to be like this. And let me open my siphon recorder. It's still with the other one. So here it is. So for example, in this case, something that helped me a lot, because usually I work with musicians, I'm always working with the same people. I like to be pairing with people that I like their music. Something that helped me a lot to try to sync my visuals and all the changes I was doing in real time with the music that was playing was just to use the BPM. So I defined it to be just at a certain BPM because I already knew that the song was just running at that frame rate. But then just each quarter note, now it's just each bar is just switching. So I'm really using that as a basis because even if it's not exactly at the right moment, it will feel great and you will gain a lot in audio reactivity. You don't need to be reading the audio in real time. Just by setting the metro with the correct, is this one, sorry. I'm in the total darkness, I cannot see a thing. And just enabling some gates to just affect and be looking for different random values that they will go in sync with the tempo and with the track. That was really, really helpful. And this is also relying on siphon, but I had to use a GTL node to being able to just also switch the background transparency. So I can leave some trails, and mainly I use this patch with BDMX to kind of apply some extra stuff. So this is the raw mode. And well, I'm just loading some 3D models and just enabling everything at the same time, so it's running fine. So the more things you leave open, the more possibilities you will have to just play in real time. I usually do like super simple patches because I try to use one different patch per track, so I'm not really using the same patch for all the performance, in this case for this patching specific, but in other moments I will create something bigger. And for that, using GGL node to create different layers that will help you a lot to kind of keep everything just organized for just the main display. And I think I talked too much. Where is my Discord?
I think you talk just enough. This is perfect.
That was too much. Okay, I'm not going to switch on the lights or something at some moment. Let me stop streaming. What are your thoughts on pre-rendered components? A ver, I'm going to just stop the thing. Sorry. I mean, now it's night. Can't see anything. A ver. Live performance, the pessimist pre-render everything as studio in real time. I mean, I like to use my own things and modify everything in real time. I mean, I can use videos that I recorded as source footage. But I mean, if the performance is going to be the same always and all is super on sync, maybe I don't need to be there. Maybe I can be in the bar just having a beer. Maybe it's not that fun, you know? Just sitting at the computer, just seeing that the video is being played. Maybe it's not that interesting, but it depends also on the kind of performance you're doing, you know? If it's more open, if all needs to be super on sync, I won't use Max for that. Maybe we use, I don't know, QLab or MatMapper to just trigger everything and then just create queues. Or, for example, Milumin, that is also super great for creating timelines, you know? But that's like a different scenario. It's not that non-linear or real-time generated. So in my case, I prefer to do it in real time because happy accidents happen. And sometimes you don't know how you did that, and it's like, this is great. I cannot repeat it again.
That is true, yeah. Absolutely true.
That's really true. That's why I dove in the past into analog synthesizers, but for video, for visual ones, I cannot save presets in there. I can take pictures of the patch and how I patching things, but honestly, it will never going to be repeated. And I really like that feeling of being in real time and just performing, you know, because if not, for me, makes no sense. That's the thing.
Very understandable. Marta, I think that patch can be an awesome checklist for people who are preparing for live performances in Max. Is that a patch that you're comfortable with sharing?
Yeah, sure. I can share this thing with those points. Maybe I can remove those kind of shitty patches from the past.
I don't think they're shitty at all.
I mean, they were built in Max 5. They're objects that they don't even exist anymore. That's fun. And that's another question when you need to update your patches along the time. When you're using things that are not longer working, and especially in processing, it happens to me a lot, that maybe I did some stuff in processing 3 and now in 4, the libraries are not compatible and they don't work, so I need to save copies of everything and keep all the versions of processing in my computer. And I remember keeping Max 5, 6, and 7 in my computer at the same time.
Wow.
Trying to survive with those questions. Let me save this thing.
All right, so while you share it, maybe after you share that, we can move on to the breakout rooms, or I guess they are now the meetup rooms on Discord, for those who want to continue the conversation with Marta or Helen.
Yeah, I'm going to switch on my lights.
Exactly, in a brighter environment. Yeah, it's also incredibly dark here. Yeah, really.
A ver. Well, there it goes. Don't look at the terrible subpatches, but it's there. But I'm going to switch on my lights
All right.
because I cannot see anything. A ver.
Fantastic. And thank you so much, Marta, for the presentation. And with that, I'm going to stop recording this meetup. We can move on to the social side of things.